loud enough for those in the back. My name is Shirley. I am the, thank you, where do I click to go next? Wonderful. So, I am the product owner of the Advanced Analytics Workspace. As Vadia has already mentioned, it is where our data scientists work and do their beautiful magic. So, first things first though, how many data scientists do we have in the room here? Can you put your hands up? Okay, and how many of these data scientists are interested in infrastructure? Oh wow, I did not expect this many. Yeah, awesome, good. So let me try and bring this to you very clearly. You'll have time to ask questions. However, if you think that something is like, really burning, just feel free to interrupt me and raise your hand and, I'll address you, yeah? So, sexy cloud infrastructure for data scientists. I mean, the name says it all, yeah? What is it? It's this. So, first of all, the cloud is a fairly new technology for companies, for organizations, especially for banks to start touching and using. So that in itself can be a little scary at times for some of our stakeholders. But data science is something that is, I think in the essence of it, very new for companies like banks, yeah? So the combination of both is basically this here, right? So the way that infrastructure was always built is there was a need to do something, and then the infrastructure was built to satisfy that need, right? However, when we're talking about data science, we're talking about building an infrastructure for how it should be used, right? So we're actually focusing on the way it's going to be used rather than what it's going to be able to do, okay? So data science in itself is, in my understanding is, on the infrastructure side, is not just the data and the science and the magic that results out of it, right? It is also, in a big part, how and where to do this magic. So if you picture a little witch in her, in her chamber, if there are no potions, or if there are no ingredients, or if there is no table to actually put all these things on, it makes it a lot more difficult. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do we from infrastructure try and make the work with data scientists easier and basically enable them. So what is the AA Workspace? AA stands for Advanced Analytics. So the AA Workspace is basically the concept of exploration and production together, right? It is data science in the cloud, so we work exclusively on AWS. We use other tools as well, not necessarily only AWS native tools, but we build the whole thing in AWS. We've got a data science oriented toolkit, right? Well, set of tools where we try to accommodate the needs of our very close and very technical data scientists, as well as the need of other data scientists who are not as technical as the ones who sit with us directly in our tribe, right? One of our main goals is to provide the freedom to explore, okay, while being security compliant. As you can imagine, in a bank, this is a very, very, very big thing. It is part of our everyday work, is to make sure that what we do, what we enable data scientists to do, is security compliant. So now you're mixing security, you're mixing freedom, you're mixing, various tools. So basically it is sort of like in the witch's lab, right? We also aim to provide the opportunity to self-provision, machines, self-provision, tools, self-provision, data sets. So basically, we're trying to put the data scientist in a position where the data scientist gets to decide how they want to work, right? Including access to internet libraries and packages. Again, security would raise a big eyebrow and be like, no. But we've sorted that out. We are fully security compliant, which has been a very, very big job, especially since the first job was to really make them understand that exploration and production go hand in hand, right? You need real productive data to explore properly and to build models. And in that sense, it's basically like a new animal, right? What we use in AWS mainly from the AWS services is we use EC2 instances. We use EMR for the use of Hadoop, right? If the data sets are too big to handle on a single machine, happens a lot, we're fine with that. We use Lambda, Glue, and Athena also to enable data exploration with the well-known SQL. And we use things like Service Catalog to try to make it a little more understandable and give it a bit of an overview, right? Now, for all those who are interested in infrastructure, here's, I'll give you a little introduction, high-level introduction into the architecture that we built. So basically we have different user profiles, right? We have data scientists, we have data owners. What's not up here is we also were sort of trying to go towards business users and data engineers. However, one single person can basically assume all of the roles if they so wish to do. And we try to not segregate them too much, as we understand that it is cumbersome to have to assume different roles in order to do one single job, right? So what we have is we've got this very private VPC, okay? And within that VPC, so we connect via Direct Connect, we use Ping ID, so Active Directory Authentication, to allow our users access. We'll pass the passwords and the usernames, thanks to security. And what we have is so we segregate the environments according to use cases, yeah? When you work on a use case, according to our compliance, you need to be able to access the resources for that use case only. We know that a lot of data scientists have access to multiple use cases because they don't always work on a single use case at any given point in time. However, all of that is still compliant. So the way that we segregate it is with a very complex allocation of roles and permissions that happens in the background. It is beautifully automated. And it allows data scientists to basically access their tools. As you can see on the picture, we've got Jupyter Lab, we've got RStudio, we've got Cloud9. We also have some dashboarding tools like supersets, like R Shiny, specific to R, in order to basically really leverage the computation power that they need. Within that environment, they are able to access the data that is specific to that use case only, right? That data usually resides on our data lake that is outside of the infrastructure of the Advanced Analytics Workspace. However, the Workspace also provides the possibility to upload data directly into the Workspace and use that in combination with the data that we have on the data lake. Reason being geolocation data, things like that, that you won't actually push through a data pipeline and have shown to you in the form of a flat parquet file, right? That is not the point here. This S3 bucket, we basically use S3, we store the data in S3, and we use various VPC endpoints to guarantee that traffic goes where it is supposed to go and that you have the access that you need to have, right? For the purpose of coding and sharing code, we offer access to Code Commit, which is a versioning tool. I don't see why anybody would code without a versioning tool anymore, so that is part of our standard stack, right? We also offer open repositories for data scientists to really be able to collaborate across the teams and across the use cases, reuse what they've written, or just experiment with each other, yeah? All of that, as I said, automated. We've got our code pipelines, we've got our deployment pipelines, we've got our automated way of accessing KMS keys. So there's really no worries that the data that we have is not encrypted or that it is accessible by anyone who's not allowed to access it, right? I think that's about it. If you have any questions, keep them. Okay, I can run you through this in a little more detail. I didn't really know how to prepare this slide specifically due to my lack of knowledge of what your level of knowledge is. So I'll just leave it at that. This is the overall infrastructure we run, right? Now, how do we build, right? When we say we're going to build infrastructure for data scientists, there are 3 key principles that we always keep in mind. And those are, as you can see, autonomy, flexibility, and speed. It doesn't always work, but you know, this is what we have in mind, and this is how we build our processes, and this is what we kind of work towards enabling across the, you know, across our architecture. So first things first, let's give to autonomy. All right. So building for data scientists and keeping autonomy in mind basically means that we try and meet the need of the data scientist to have responsibility within that infrastructure. Okay. So push as much responsibility as possible onto the data scientist, right? The reason being that the nature of data science work doesn't necessarily allow data scientists to predict how they're going to be working in a day or two or a week or two, right? So we need to accommodate that uncertainty and that unpredictability, right? So the keyword here for me, from infrastructure side, is self-provisioning. Anything that the data scientist can provision himself or herself is what we have in mind when we build the infrastructure. We also try to offer the self-provisioning of a wide range of services. So we understand that there are tools that allow you to do data science, but the tool base is growing. We have access to a whole cloud and everything within that cloud, and we're really trying to hit the different parts of what data science could be. So it's not just the modeling. Sometimes it's testing out a deployment. Sometimes it's wanting to bring something live in, you know, in a certain form, right? Sometimes it has to do with dashboarding. So that there are many, many different areas in which we need to provide tools in order to enable data science. Now, what we have to keep in mind when doing this is that there are differing levels of technical understanding. So as I said, in our tribe, we're very lucky to have very, very technical data scientists, but our goal is not just to stay within the tribe, it is to provide this platform to the whole bank, yeah? And in the whole bank, we do have other types of users. So we have users who are interested in starting with data science. They should be enabled as well. We have users who are not necessarily interested in starting with data science, but then they want to go and explore the data for which they already have understanding, yeah? So they should also be enabled. I mean, imagine you had someone to do your data pre-processing for you and someone to build your data products for you, right? You could focus on so much more within your work as data scientists. And this is where we try to use this infrastructure to invite and accommodate what we like to call citizen data scientists, or embedded, meaning embedded in business data scientists, right? So obviously, as you know, when you have a need, you've got challenges, right? So we have a lot of challenges. The challenges that we have, concerning this are specific to coming up with that set of tools, okay? So how do I, as a product owner for my infrastructure, understand what my user base needs if it is so diverging, right? And how do I then present these tools in a way that all the data scientists across my user base are able to use them? So keyword again, self-provisioning, even for citizen and embedded data scientists, right? Very important. Now, the next principle is flexibility, yeah? So the flexibility also stems from the fact that even within a day, at the day-to-day work of a data scientist, they don't know what they're going to be applying, right? So it needs to be flexible, not in the sense that they can self-provision it, but in the sense that they have what they need. They need to be able to themselves experiment with new tools, okay? So I can't offer the whole world of AWS in a security compliance, environment, but I need to be able to allow data scientists, whether they be citizen or more technical, potentially for the more technical data scientists, yeah, to experiment with new tools, new things that come on the market. I mean, think of things like AutoML tools, okay? So you as data scientists hear it and you go, yeah, but I'm doing my job, right? So what do I need this for? But then when you're building the same model for the 10th time, you might be happy to have an AutoML tool that's going to allow you to just, apply that model to like, you know, different business areas of different countries, or basically just different settings, right? So the keyword here is user centricity, okay? So the focus on my user base, and as I just told you, my user base is very varied, okay? I've got the very technical ones and I've got the citizen ones, right? So what we basically do in order to enable flexibility is that we try and really focus on the data scientists and their needs. Meaning, we have different mechanisms to guarantee a very close alignment with our user base. We meet up every quarter at least to discuss wishes or to discuss, you know, certain impediments they've had and how we can solve them. We try and really stay close to our users, all of them, to figure out continuously, as their requirements change, what it is that they need, okay? In that sense, we're talking about, for example, some data scientists want to build their own containers. So they're really happy having their tools Dockerized and, you know, managed on the back end, but they'd like to have them with a certain type of configuration, okay? Others don't want to hear about Docker or containerization technologies and just want to have their Dockers ready and set to go, right? So standard configuration versus as many different versions of configuration as you have users, right? And this is, in my opinion, where we can enable and allow for flexibility to be leveraged for the purpose of the work of the data scientist. So, user centricity, right? I'm not just bombarding you with, like, you know, some of these, you know, words. It's definitely something that we encompass into our, you know, our way of working, our way of building, and our daily focus, right? Next, we've got speed, okay? So, speed, the keyword here is help infrastructure help you fast, right? So you know that the work of data scientists is very creative. Okay, I'll say it's creative. I mean, I've seen what they do. I did some at uni. I remember it. It's, you can't just sit down. It's not a, you know, I'm going to follow an algorithm and that's what it is. So I really need to be able to get into the topic, to immerse myself in that topic, and then figure out a way of doing it that no one else has thought of, right? That is like my competitive advantage as a data scientist. So on the infrastructure side, I'm saying, okay, oops, but then when you need something, you probably need it now, right? Like, you don't want to be impatient, you know, I don't want you to be impatient, so I want to be able to deliver it as quickly as possible. What that means for the infrastructure is that the need that I see is that data scientists are able to explore, on the one hand, the existing infrastructure, so look at what we have, what we've built, okay, understand what that is, have us as counterparts, you know, as basically as team members in order to be able to, you know, to explore what we have. So what we do for that in our tribe is we've got these cross-functional tile teams that consists of multiple data scientists working on use cases, and one of the many people in that team is basically a DevOps from the infrastructure team, right? Who's going to work with you, who's going to figure out what you're doing, why you're doing it, and maybe understand a little faster what the needs are going to be, right? Or the DevOps team themselves touching tools that you might want to use, doing research in those, figuring out how to integrate them into the system before you even think about, oh, this is the tool that I want to use. Have an idea of how to build it into what we already have, right? Or have an idea of how to build the pipelines that are going to allow for such tools to be integrated quicker. So that when data scientists come up to us and say, we need to, you know, we want this new tool, that we say, okay, cool, we've got this pipeline, we've just changed it like this and like that, and this type of tool can be integrated within the next few days rather than weeks or months. I mean, mind you that historically we've had a integration time of about 3 to 6 months for a tool, okay? Depending on whether it was cloud friendly or whether it wasn't. And so far, like, we have come to a point where we're down to a month or two to integrate a tool. Sometimes it's even faster if it's, you know, cloud friendly or slightly cloud native, we can deploy the tool within 2 weeks, right? So, or the feature, maybe it's just a feature of a tool that is needed, right? But this concept of the tiles team and having someone from infrastructure sit with data scientists, I think is paramount to, you know, enabling speed of delivery, right, for data scientists and for their fast changing requirements. I'm not complaining. Another point that I have learned over the past year and a half is basically enabling data scientists to be able to hand in technical requirements for the tools and features that they want, right? Because a lot of the times, and you guys know this just as well as I do, it's a problem in communication, okay? So you're going to talk about some behavior you want, and the infrastructure team is going to talk about technical aspects, yeah? So there's a huge gap between those two things. And when you do enable a data scientist, on top of actually having infrastructure people collaborate very closely with data scientists to understand infrastructure, to understand how things are built, what the implications are, be it networking, proxy settings, ports, be it, I don't know, data flows, yeah, be it communication between machines and other machines, okay? Then data scientists are able to themselves in their exploration understand and figure out the technical implications of what they're asking, right? And they are able to relay those technical implications to the team that is supposed to implement them. And that speeds things up enormously. So we've had a few cases of this where data scientists have been able to provide us very specific, very detailed, very technical requirements, and then we're not even talking weeks anymore, yeah? We're talking a week. We're sometimes even talking days, right? So in order to not disturb, as I mentioned before, this creative, you know, flow of the work that you do, I see that speed is definitely one of the, you know, the main principles that we need to build our infrastructure for. What this also means is a high level of automation, yeah? So this high level of automation relates to all the three principles. However, the more the back end, the system is automated, the easier it gets to implement new things, to roll new things out, even just for POC purposes, right? So say you guys, this group is working on a certain use case and you want to POC a new tool. You don't need it, or you don't know if you need it yet. Why should I, as an infrastructure provider, not be able to allow you to POC it while all the others don't know they need it until you figure out whether the others need it or not, or whether it could be good or not? And that again relates to automation, okay? A great deal of that is investing in automation, which is something that most management doesn't like to hear, because the, you know, direct money value of automation is not necessarily a number you can pull out of your sleeve. However, the decreased time to delivery of new features and new tools, that you can pull out as a number out of your sleeve and basically, you know, present that way. What we also have is the ease of accessing new data, right? So I know that your work is not just computation, okay? So your work is also data. Which data do I have? Where do I get it from? Is the load automated? Do I get it clean? Do I have to process it? Do I have to automate my own data processing, right? So from an infrastructure perspective, integrating data sources is a key function in order to enable, you know, speed of delivery, in order to enable you guys not to get impatient, right, in your work. This is something that we do very easily by basically just connecting them, okay? Whether we use them or not is something else, but a connection that is unused doesn't generate costs, it doesn't generate, I don't know, any questions concerning compliance or data protection. It is just a physical connection, you know, that is there, right? And then when it needs to be used, it is easy to use it. So our main connection to data sources is the data lake. However, as I said, we leave open the possibility of uploading your own data into the Workspace directly, and we have connected other data sources just because, say, one use case needed it at that point in time. or we could anticipate from that one use case that others would need it in the future. Yeah. And then this is more process-oriented, yeah, that's on the technical side. Self-service request for tools. That also goes back to being able to handle in technical requirements, but let's assume that 10% of our user base is able to handle in technical requirements, and then I'm being very optimistic, yeah? So what do I do with the rest of them? How do they themselves dictate when they want to ask for something, what they want to ask for, and how do I give them the channel to ask for such, yeah? How do I follow up? How do I get my team to follow up, right? And how do we then organize the team in order to find bandwidth for, you know, testing out, checking out new tools, aligning requirements, etc. That work that is, you know, basically something that is behind the, you know, behind the curtains, that happens behind the curtains, is something that is absolutely necessary to enable data science sustainable implementation features or delivery of features for data scientists. Now, humor the impatient data scientist relates to don't make them become impatient. There's a good reason why data scientists are impatient, and that I have understood is very specific to the line of work, yeah? So, next, shift the mindset, data scientists, yeah? So, you are the change and you are the catalyst towards a data-driven organization. One of the goals of RBI is to become a data-driven organization, yeah? So that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, but the way that I see it, it basically means enable people to have access to the data that they need when they need it in order to do the work that they need to do. So if you're looking at these old sort of structures, right, legacy systems, highly governed, very rigid, moving towards a data-driven organization, I think is just, you know, a bit of a wish, yeah, but it's nothing that you could say is very practical if you do not take into account the people who are actually doing that work and their needs. So all the needs we talked about, all the principles for building infrastructure for data scientists relate to the fact that if you guys are transforming the way that organizations are seeing data, the way that employees in organizations are able to work with data, then you need the infrastructure that is going to allow you to do that, and you need the infrastructure that is going to support exactly that movement, right? So, in my opinion, if we want to leverage, as organizations, if we want to leverage the full power of data science and the value that it brings to the organizations, we need to transform the infrastructure. Now, we're cool with infrastructure here, right? But like, I think most organizations don't put so much thought or effort, or maybe have their, you know, their framework is too rigid in order to be able to enable free working, free access to data, free access to computation resources, right? But I still think that it is your job as data scientists to demand it and to insist that you get it. And as our data scientists have done in the past, be loud about it. You know, I mean, that fancy word we like to use here, escalate a lot, right? Make some noise and demand that your infrastructure transforms with you, right? So when you're sitting in an organization that's going to give you a, I don't know, Tableau and say, do your magic on Tableau, and you say, but I can't, right? I need a lot more than that. Then you need to make sure that infrastructure is going to deliver that for you, because it is possible. Even in a highly secured environment, it is possible to enable free self-provision work with data and with computation resources. I mean, and mind you that on the AA Workspace, data scientists are able to spin up instances of whichever size they wish, yeah? So there is no cap on any size, there is no cap on how much RAM you have, there is no cap on how many cores you use. I mean, sometimes it's weird when you know what the person's doing and you're like, so you need, I don't know, 256 gigabyte of RAM for this? And then they go like, yeah, well, I've not figured out how to do it yet. Fine, it's fair, you know? It is exploration, and it is figuring out the best way to do your work, yeah? To implement your models, your algorithms. So from the infrastructure point of view, I know that you, as data scientists, need to demand it, and you as data scientists need to push your infrastructure and your organizations into the right direction. it wasn't easy for us either. Yeah, it took a lot of work. We fought against a lot of the wishes of the data scientists, but in the end, it is in our interest as organizations to make the most value out of this, because mind you, it's not cheap, and it's not supposed to be cheap, but it is supposed to bring a lot of value. So I see you guys as catalysts, okay? Just make sure you fire this thing up and make sure you push it and make sure you get what you need to get. As Vanya said, if you need any input, maybe our lessons learned out of infrastructure could help you guys, you know, get a foot into your infrastructure if you don't have it yet. I mean, I'm not really sure how many companies actually offer environments that are as free as open as this one. I know that some do, so we had a call with a bank a while ago and they do, which I thought was awesome. But I also know a lot of other organizations where all of this is way more restricted, namely to like a tool or two, right? And that isn't necessarily the best way to go about when you want to drive innovation, you know. Good, so I'm pretty much done early. Thank you for your attention. I would take questions if you have any. If you don't, then I won't take any questions.
How to get this? We are highly interested from planning and finance to get this stuff.
What you want to get?
Yeah,
exactly.
This analytical platform where we can, the product you're offering.
The Advanced Analytics Workspace?
Yeah.
So that is internal to RBI?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's for RBI data scientists and for, yeah.
He is RBI.
Oh, you are?
I'm RBI from planning and finance.
Come see me. come see me, I'm on the first floor, yeah? I'll let you know what you can do. If you have a use case or if you're working on a use case, come see me. We can discuss the details and, you know, go ahead and
yeah, we have already arranged a meeting with my boss and Diego Bonic.
Okay.
And after that, I suppose it's just a matter of days or minutes or
you know banks,
when we can
based on the talk, yes.
So you know how banks are like sort of really slow snails?
Okay.
Just come and see me, yeah? Don't wait for your meeting, don't wait for your boss's meeting with my boss, just come and talk to me. Yeah? It's way easier. Yeah? Works way faster. Cool. I'll be looking forward to you.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Yes?
With the data pipes, how do you secure that? So I'll give a hypothetical example. I'm doing some analysis where I need real-time weather data.
Okay.
Do you set it up that because I saw it, you had the AWS, then you got the virtual, go back to the first slide, that one, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So would you allow a pipe outside to some real-time weather data, or would you say, okay, that has to be brought in to the AWS or the VPC environment for testing, and then, I'm just trying to think how you would do.
Okay, so it depends. Yeah, the question you're asking is very valid because we do have a staging area where we bring in, but that's more specific to code. Yeah. So when you want to access a repository in the internet, what you do is you go over a firewall. It has to be whitelisted. You pull the code in, it goes into a staging area that then allows you to use this cutoff from the internet, right? That is like the minimum requirement. As we're currently implementing sort of CM, I'd say parts of CM solutions in order to really figure out whether the code is malicious or to do some, basic static code analysis on that to make sure that what you're using is not actually hurtful, okay? Now, when you're talking about using data and a data stream, so we have this not on the workspace, but I know that AI, so the AI team has it, access the data source, stream the data directly in. I mean, data in itself, unless it is code or code hidden as data, cannot hurt you, yeah? Now, when you're streaming the data in, what we have is we have no internet out, right? So we can pull things in, but we cannot push anything out. You can't push anything onto your Bitbucket outside or your, Git's repository outside of our VPC. That way, we also make sure that to great extent, malicious code would not be able to actually send anything out. So basically steal your data and send it out. I know that the ways are many and the ways are great and powerful to do things like that when you really want to, right? But no, data streaming for now is a direct data streaming. Other projects do it in a sense that they do bring it into a pipeline and they have code checks on that, or they have checks on that data, and if it is clean, then it passes, right? So there are many possibilities of doing it. I wouldn't do it any differently at this point in time than to stream it in. And as we proceed with our security implementations, of course, put some checks onto that stream,
Yeah, my question is a little bit related to this
Okay.
one, and it is, as a result of the insight that your data scientists get out of their work on this platform, do they produce some kind of code that you need to package and deploy?
Ha,
Or,
yes.
or do they only, or the insight do they get ends up in a PowerPoint slide and
Oh, no, we don't do AI here, yeah, we don't put anything in PowerPoint.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
Does your infrastructure provide you with any help on deploying, or you just put everything
yes.
on Lambdas and you just...
Yes-ish, right? So yes-ish because we are actually in the process of setting up a separate deployment platform, okay, where that we can really call production and not exploration production, where the models will be pushed in as Dockers, right? They'll have everything they need. The environment basically to run the model will be set up, and it'll run within that environment. So for now, the way that we've done it, because we have had productionization of use cases that we have needed to productionalize on this platform for, for the sake of like not having any other platform to do it on, directly in our tribe, let me correct that. So what we have done is we've dedicated a person to basically saying, okay, what does the model need? How does this model need to run? And then implementing it. So modules we've had for that would be, for example, a Lambda that basically does like a dynamic scheduling. Yeah, when the data lands in the data lake, it triggers the Lambda. The Lambda then spins up an EC2, pulls the Docker in, the model runs. The data that is generated, the results that are generated in the model, go right back onto the data lake, and then from there they are accessible to the business counterparts, right? Sometimes it does happen that we hand over code. It has also happened that like a business unit wants to deploy it on their local laptops or wherever else, right? So in that case, here's the file, and here's an onboarding, like not to leave you completely alone with it.
Thank you.
How do you make sure that they have the access rights to the data?
Also interesting. So what we have is we have this shared collaboration with the data lake, right? So the data comes into a bucket. Actually, it's a folder. It's a folder in a bucket. Each use case has an own folder, and the data lake then has a key that encrypts this data, right? So the data lake then we set up it's called a cross-account permission for the machines that are going to be used by the data scientists in that use case to decrypt that data. So we basically have cross-account access to the encryption keys, okay? And the machine you work on is able to read it decrypted.
This is the exploration guide, but I'm talking about if you deploy the product, how
Productionized it. Probably, I assume it's probably going to be the same thing. I mean, I know an encryption key costs you $1 a month, right? So.
But this means that you have to know in advance who is going to be expected to be using it.
No. Well, yes. You basically have to know which machine is going to be accessing, which Docker is going to be accessing that information. So the way we do it is basically with a naming convention. So we've got a naming convention for use cases. A use case that is run here has the same name as the bucket on the data lake. So it knows that it's exactly that bucket that it needs, right?
Hierarchical viewing provisions would probably have to hand program into it. You cannot really deduce it from some LDAP or somewhere.
Say that again. No, there are no users involved on production. So
But
no
who is
user.
going to consume it then?
That is the thing. So either you will consume data over a dashboard, okay?
Exactly, but
Yeah.
this is where I was trying to end up in the
Yeah.
sense, how are you making sure that the guys using the dashboard
Have the
only
access.
see what they should be seeing, maybe even on
Yeah.
some hierarchical
Well,
structures.
but basically making sure that they can only access the machines that are allowed to use that. So the permissions that you as a user have are to use the machines in a certain namespace.
So I have to push the permission concept onto the machine as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we basically put all our permissions as much as possible on machines or on, say, our lambdas, or rather than giving them to people. So a lot of the development that we do, my admins, for example, never ever have access to data itself, right? However, they can use machines in order to change the permissions of a certain bucket or delete a bucket, or have to work with the bucket that stores. Sorry?
Have you somehow streamlined that into a package or into a framework or something?
Fully automated. It's like it's either you change a line in a like an XML file, or you run a command and it does all of that in an automated way.
What does mean automated?
Like it just everything happens that is supposed to happen. So
you-
like all the
you have-
permissions go where they're supposed to go. All the people are put into the groups that have those permissions.
Yeah.
All the machines have the right to access the permissions that they need to access, and the access to the data lake is guaranteed. So it's fully automated. There's nothing manual involved.
on Docker images.
Yep.
Okay.
So but then this means in the
Because you
moment
said we
we
have different distribution channels, so
Yeah.
this sounds very tough to achieve if you.
It wasn't easy. Yeah. It took us. I think it took us about like a good 6 months to get that process fully done, and where we were sure that nothing was breaking
Yeah.
while this was happening.
But this also means that if you want to have that feature, you have to do it with Docker at the end, right? Or as with an image at the end that incorporates all of this.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
So you do
Correct.
somehow
Yeah.
channel.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, okay.
standardization
Okay.
of how we're going to hand over things. Yeah.
So but then this means that when you generate the data, you need to know beforehand if this data is going to be
No, you don't.
for use of a level 4 scientist or level 3 or whatever you have.
No. The only thing you need to know is, so we don't have level scientists. What I'll say it like this, yeah. You are use case A, yeah. You're use case B, okay. So you need to know beforehand who's going to be in use case A. However, you can also figure it out later and have the person added. So if you decide to change to use case A, because
How do you synchronize your permission and viewing rights with your data lake permission? Because basically that has to be copied somehow.
yeah, cross-account policies, AWS enables all of that. Yeah, it's really awesome. Yeah.
Sorry that we're going.
No, it's fine. This is infrastructure, so I'm really happy you're asking questions. You had a question, yeah?
This was the first question,
Okay.
already answered. It was also related to GDPR actually, because
Okay.
I'm curious how this could be handled here in that case, but virtual helps a little bit.
Yeah.
But my second question is, would this architecture actually scale up to replace data warehouse, the traditional data warehouse approach?
This? Nope. No way, Jose. There's like so traditional data warehouse. What is being built to not replace, but add a missing functionality to the traditional data warehousing is the data lake. And the data lake is basically supposed to do what data warehousing does, but quicker and faster and on demand, yeah. And also allow data products to be built and generated by users themselves in a standardized way. So things like that are in the data lake. And then the computation that happens on that using that data happens here. Yeah. So we're not building a data warehouse.
I know I'm a pain, but
No, go on.
No.
I like this. Yeah.
I'm just curious. You have a lot of Jupyter and R here and stuff like that.
Yeah.
How do you get all the packages in there? Do you have some?
Dockerization. So basically when we prepare a Docker, okay, that holds this service, we basically say,
But you have to get them from Pipey or somewhere.
yeah.
Do you maybe
Pip
do you make
install.
checks there somehow?
No, at the moment,
Because if I'm bad, I put tomorrow some Python package in there and you will have it.
I know, and it's horrible, yeah, it's definitely a problem. However, as we have the staging area, yeah, if you put a malicious code into the repository and we pull it from there, because some data scientist says, oh, this is new, I want to try it out, yeah, pulls it from there, and it is malicious and it breaks the environment, who cares? Here we are raising cattle, not pets, yeah? So if one of them breaks, we throw it out. There's no pain in it. You
So
can
you're
restart an
sandboxing
instance.
heavily there.
Correct.
Yeah.
You can pull in your tool again, you can start all of your stuff. If you have your configuration saved, you can pull those in, you're fine, yeah? If this thing tries to talk outside, it's not gonna manage first of all, and it's gonna raise an alarm. And then like security and my team's gonna be on it and they're gonna be like, what? Yeah. Well, not really what, but sort of look like it sometimes. Okay, I think we had a question in the back, like we still have 2 minutes, yeah? One? Go on.
One question is related to the GDPR requests of being compliant with the ICANN request from customers.
Huh?
So how would you ensure that customer data from a certain associated with a certain user is kind of like
That is the data lake's job. If the data lake needs to wipe that customer's data, they wipe it on the source, right? So on the data lake. If we have any related data products in the workspace, they hand in a request to the workspace. Basically, we sit next to each other and we still ticket each other, yeah? I love that approach. Most people think it's weird, but I think it's awesome. So we ticket each other and then they need to go like delete all the products from this data. They will be rebuilt based on this new data. Done.
so it's not automated.
But it's on the data lake, so I don't know. No, on our side it's not automated that way, yeah? But since we sit next to each other, we basically really were like, 20 centimeters away from each other, also not compliant with, coronavirus at the moment. But however, it's a request, yeah? So when we hand in requests to the data lake for keys or access or missing tables or whatever, the response time is, I'd say, 15 minutes, yeah? And the same thing when they hand in requests to us.
So you have it per customer, not per user entry.
That I don't know, that's the data lake again. Yeah. Fairly happy to not have to deal with too much of the data stuff because it seems to me like it's more of a pain than the computation stuff. Okay, well, thank you so much again for your attention and thanks for your interest and also for all the wonderful questions. Have fun with the next talk.